Welcome back to Sakir in Bahrain, but not the Bahrain circuit that you are familiar with. No, today we will ditch the 5 kilometer circuit for a more abbreviated 3.5 outer track. Welcome to Bahrain Outer. Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Joseph Black with Ted Edwards, bringing you all the pictures of tonight's action under the floodlights here in Bahrain. Joseph, welcome in. Welcome to LMU Fridays, and welcome everybody to LMGT Sprint.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to get going. This Bahrain's layout is a different one to the one, as you mentioned, that you would expect. And well, it feels like a throwback to circuits of the past. It's a lot more straight than a lot of the circuits nowadays. Of course, Sector 2, which we're watching them go through now, is the only real exception where, I mean, there's 5 corners throughout the rest of the circuit, and there is 6 by itself in this section. So there's a lot of the heavy lifting from the corners, just from that section alone. But you can see long, straight, down to the final one. And, well, that makes up the majority of this circuit.
Yeah, of course, the Grand Prix circuit that everyone is familiar with is 5.4 kilometers or 3.6 miles if you like overall measurements. This circuit is only 3.5 or 2.2 miles. It takes the 16 turn Grand Prix circuit and shrinks it down to 11. And oh my goodness, there is a humongous dogleg back straight. You can really get drafting on, get passes done. I suspect they're going to be 3 or 5 wide. It's going to be a fun night here on RCI TV. Glad to have all of you with us. Qualifying just underway, 15 minutes. All the cars on the track tonight, LMGT 3s, 2 different classes, Pro and Am, separated by skill. And unfortunately, of course, everyone shows up as the same class. Will keep you abreast of any sort of major changes with that. Currently, Rafael Huel setting the quickest time at 13.9, 2.5 nearly quicker than Philippe Brecha in second place. Van der Voken in third place. Wilkinson up there in fourth place. Got a bunch of Ferraris. Kerrigan, Liggins, Mims Mann, the top 7. Van Jeriech and Ball, the cars that have set a time. Scotty coming through there as well. Joseph, we're late in the season. I'm sure you experienced this as well. There is typical fall off, drivers falling out of the championship as we go on, but still 19, 20 plus cars here on the penultimate round of the season. That's pretty good attrition.
It is pretty good, of course, when you see drivers that aren't in contention for the championship anymore. They do tend to drop off just a little bit. But yeah, 19 cars taking part in the penultimate round of the season, which is pretty good going. And well, the top few have already stated their claim for that pole position, with only a 10th separating the top 3 at the moment. Aston Martin's first and third, and also last on the field, but there's a few still to set their times, and we'll see where they end up going. Here's Verstappen going up to the line in 6th place, but a purple Sector 2 does promise for the number 44. Of course, there's many 44s, and I'm going to make that mistake many a time today. But yeah, he's in 6th place. The lead of the Fords at the moment, but only 2 have set their times.
Sure is. Savick goes to the provisional pole, a 13.5, half a tenth, but H behind. Huel has slumped down to 3rd. Hello to the chat. I think that's Eric Mansour who's joined us in chat saying first. You were indeed. Kevin Boss joins us. Got to talk to him earlier. Love talking to him. Hello to the Boss family, by the way. I know he's back home for the weekend. Hello, Boss family. Also, Kevin Boss letting us know in chat that he hopes to be able to join us for the finale to show off his skills. He said horrible, but I highly doubt that. Kevin Boss, a many times race winner. Reckon he could do it in LMU given the time and preparation. Savick, Brecha, Huel, the top 3. Van der Voken, Jeriech is the top 5. Verstappen, Wilkinson, Liggins, Watts, Mims Mann, the top 10 right now. And just as I say that, it all changes. Tom Watts, the AM championship leader, I do believe I'm right in saying, goes into 10th place, 1.2 off of the overall, but perhaps more importantly, trying to out-qualify those he's racing against in the AM classification, as everyone continuing to pick up a little bit. Joseph, it's a different ball game Literally, the track is different. It's a layout that almost nobody, except maybe if you played F1 in the year 2020, would have seen this layout. This isn't even the endurance layout that you would probably associate with WEC. So this is a new ball game. It's also night. It's dark. The track is cold. The tires are not gripping as much. This is almost like being put on Mars and told to race a race car.
Well, yeah, and the drivers, to be fair, not doing badly to get through it so far. I did mention earlier that it's one of those, it feels like a throwback circuit because, of course, the majority of it is straight, and here is Philippe Brescia heading through it now. And, well, of course, they've got the same first chicane as you always do, and then this is where the track would split off. So, heavy braking zone, turning right as you regularly would, but instead of going right towards the hairpin, you go left and up the hill and over the crest, and Brescia goes through it purple in that first. So the man in first at the moment looks to try and take advantage of his pace that he has so far, just to try and build his gap. But yeah, heading through that sort of mini chicane, you can go through it pretty flat out, so it's not really a chicane, but the way the track is laid out, then it's a long straight, and it heads you down to another braking zone, another one to the right. Then you have a long straight, and that is a lap around, well, it would be if Brescia wasn't coming into the pits around the Bahrain circuit.
Too much curb in 5 and 6, I reckon, and he invalidated back down to the pit lane, but still the quickest car thus far at a 13.1. Savic now slips to second place, over 3/10 off the overall pace. Vermac has made their presence known for the first time in qualifying, up in fourth. That's more representative of where we would expect that car to be. Van der Voken now the final car inside of the top 5. All but 2 cars, Rizov and Ibiza, have run a valid lap time, and a couple off the pace quite a bit. We actually have 21 cars this evening, as Martin Lawrence has joined us late and is doing a very typical Martin Lawrence impression in the 88 Ford Mustang, leaving qualifying for the very last black, as we've come to sort of expect from the Czech driver.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you only generally see from, well, league administrators, things like that. So they just make sure everything's running all right. But clearly, somebody who has a different way of preparing than many others on the grid, and each to their own. I mean, I wouldn't mind going for a first run right at the end personally, but I know that's just me. A lot of drivers like to get their preparation in. Of course, we had a practice session before that. The majority of this field competed in. I believe it was 19 of the 21 that competed in that session. So, yeah, and we will see where they're able to go in their final runs. It may well have been that they were practicing for a particular instance, or perhaps that they were just late. We'll see what their preparation is like and how they've been affected as they head through the race. Callum Kerrigan up to 9th in that 86 Ferrari, and well, he is going to he's second place of all the Ferraris, just behind Wilkinson, just ahead, and there's quite a few drivers clumped around that 7/10 behind Brescia gap. But yeah, at the moment, Brescia, who almost has a 4/10 gap on everybody else, looks as though he's going to go on to take that pole. 5 minutes left in the session, so anything could really happen, but he's in a very good position.
Certainly is. He set his personal best, did the Callum Kerrigan car, set their personal best in every sector the last time through. You love to see it. Here is Martin Lawrence, a driver who is very exciting indeed. Couldn't quite drive through the field, qualified 11th last week and drove up inside the top 5, but just ran out of time. It took him too long to get that car running. Martin Lawrence, though, has shown us certainly one of the cars that can knife through the field, especially from about the halfway point of the race on. The car either comes alive or the driver comes alive or something, and they're able to gain a lot of positions. They did do that last week, but because they started so deep in the field, that limited their final result. Looking for something inside the top 10 tonight for Martin Lawrence. Felipe Breccia not on a quick one, continuing to circulate around, but this is not going to be the lap. Still got a ton of time here. A minute 13.1. Even the slower cars are doing about minute 15s on average. So a lot of time left here, Black, to set a bunch of lap times.
I didn't realize you were calling me that, to be honest. I thought it was just a piece of terminology that you were using, but never mind. Don't mind.
Well, I called you. I
Anyway,
called you Mr. Black earlier on, and
yeah.
I can't get off of it now. I always call you Joseph. We normally call you Joseph, but I called you Mr. Black earlier, and all of a sudden I feel like we're in a business meeting.
Well, I mean, it's a business meeting I like to be a part of, I will say, because well, we get to watch cars go around a racetrack, and that's the whole premise of the meeting. So could be worse. Anyway, we only have 3 minutes 17 left in the session, so there's only a couple more minutes for drivers to set their lap times, a couple more opportunities, and well, it's now or never, really. You've got two drivers with Raphael Huel going up there at the top of the timesheets within a tenth of each other. So this battle for pole is going to be closer than I made it sound earlier, with Raphael Huel up there, the newest contender.
Martin Lawrence does set his personal best. The problem is that only gets him up a couple of spots, still way off of the pace. Looking back at Chad, of course, Boss talking about his most recent LMU exploits. It sounded like it went very well, but league racing is a completely different thing, mind you. Ash Bibby joins us in the chat as well. He wants you to make a particular noise, Joseph. That's completely up to you. But Ash Bibby says "ooh woo." Totemo Kawaii from Ash Bibby there. The Fat Stig, we know him as Les Stevenson. Good evening and welcome in from Ibiza on vacation holiday. Love to see that kicking back with a few drinks, knowing Les, enjoying a little racing here in the desert perhaps.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I'm glad that he's drinking there and not at the racetrack itself, because I believe it's actually illegal to be drinking around Bahrain. It's something along those lines, and there's a lot of restrictions in Bahrain, but I won't go into that unless the race gets very dull. But yeah, 1 minute 46 left in the session. You got the last lap times able to happen, and Raphael Huel went purple by quite a significant margin in that first sector, 0.139, and then he clearly backed out of it in the final one. So something's happened in that final sector, because that second sector was pretty close, and this is his last opportunity to try and attack Philippe Brescia up at the top. He's under a tenth behind. He's in fact exactly three quarters even of a tenth behind, and he's actually going to try and see if he can get one more lap in, which means that he's going to try and prepare himself even better for this one. And well, he's going to have less fuel in the car, so he's going to have an opportunity, and it's just whether he seizes it.
This is what you're looking for here at Bahrain, particularly the outer circuit, the abbreviated circuit that we're running here this evening. You're looking for these close lap times. You're looking for close competition. And my money is that if Breccia and Huel continue this, they're not going to really be able to get away from each other in the race. They're going to be towing each other around the racing circuit, almost Le Mans style. Martin Lawrence on a personal best, Sector 1, still 0.3 off of their fellow countryman Philippe Breccia up in front. But that lap time didn't do them any good. That was invalid in Sector 2. We've seen quite a bit of that this evening, if we're completely honest. I don't know exactly what's so tricky. It might just be that they're using a little bit too much curb in one of the elbows, and it's triggering a track cut detection, or they could be going a little bit too wide as well. Also something that can trigger that in LMU. Zach Vermack set the quickest third sector of all and set a 13.5, not quite good enough to take or challenge pole, but still looked pretty good. But that will end qualifying for them. Christoph Estrepa down in 5th place. Not too terribly bad and not too unusual for them, hanging on inside the top 5. Another car that typically races better than they have qualified in this series.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to prefer one of the two. I prefer race pace rather than qualifying pace. I just don't think I've got the consistency to be able to keep it up over one lap. But race pace, I feel as though I'm much better at just getting into the rhythm of it. But if you can do the pace over one lap more than everybody else, then it's mightily impressive and good. Puts you in good stead come the Sunday. You've got the drivers coming up for their final lap times for Streppen, who'd invalidated, so he will not be setting his lap time into the pits he comes, nor did Brescia. So that pole position and the man currently sitting on pole position is, well, it's a pole position that he could have lost very easily, but it doesn't look as though. And no, it's confirmed that nobody was able to beat it in the end. Raphael Huel did not get any better, but Philip Brescia took that pole position. Raphael Huel took that P2 in the end, and he'll be starting alongside him. Zach Vermaak in third. In the Aston Martin, shared by Huel and also shared by Ronan Zavic in fourth place. Christoph Verstappen, the lead forward, in fifth, with Zeno van der Driesch and Milan van der Weyken in sixth and seventh. Tom Watts, the lead McLaren, in eighth. Angela Scotti in ninth, and Reese Wilkinson rounding out the top 10 in that grid. Only 3/4 of a second behind Philippe Brescia. Then Callum Kerrigan, only 8/10 back from that pole time. Chris van der Linde in 12th, next to Peter Varga. Then Madam Mimsman in 14th. Danny Ball in 15th, Terry Liggins in 16th, then to round out the field, Ryan Cassidy, Danaesh Ibiza, Martin Lawrence, and Ivan Ritsov. And Andy Cotton as well, just to get to the bottom of the to the very bottom of the field. Forgot there was a 21st coming in late, but Andy Cotton rounding out your 21 strong grid for your Bahrain race around the outer circuit here at Sakhir.
21 cars really strong for the penultimate round of the championship. And because we are in the penultimate round of the championship, time to look at the championship points. All LMGT 3s, mind you, but two different classes. Starting off with Pro, Martin Lawrence leading the standings, has slid a little bit and may still do after qualifying 19th tonight. Still has a championship lead, 113 points. Zach Vermaak in P2 in the championship on 88 did out-qualify Lawrence tonight. Going to be very close. Angela Scotti still very much in the mix in third place, 81 points back to Philippe Brescia in fourth. All of those cars very much alive. The rest, Zeno van Driesch rounds out your top five, and then it's Huel, Verstappen, Gill, Martins, and Savic, your top 10 in Pro. Outside of that, Cassidy, Mimsman, Liggins, Wilkinson, and D'Orazio, the top 15. Kanani, Armstrong, Badowski, Valet, Daly, and Liddon, the 21 Pro cars. Moving on to the AM standings, Tom Watts did lose the championship lead a week ago by virtue of not participating, or either that or not finishing the race. Van der Velken is leading the AM Championship, 116 over Tom Watts, 6-point difference, all to play for. Daniel Merchant holding down third place with 90 championship points, still in the mix if things go wrong for the top two. Behind them, it's Cotton and Whittle, that's Richard Whittle, in the top five. Behind them, Campbell, Varga, Vaughn, Kanats, and Fasciuto, the top 10. That's Takahashi, by the way. I do apologize for that. Shamison in 11th place. Clerico, Racer, Ball, Rizov, the top 15. Kerrigan, Forrest, Gallardi, Lopez, Vitas Mas, and Beckett, the 21 other AM cars. Well, I got to say, it's very close in both championships, Joseph. Very rarely do we get to the point in the season where both series are fighting for a championship. Martin Lawrence had a humongous lead a few weeks ago. That shrunk. He's starting 19th. It's the deepest he started in the field all season long. It could continue to go pear-shaped for him tonight. Tom Watts loses the championship lead a week ago as well in the AM class. And you go to a racetrack where you have literally no notebook at. How do you make it through a night like tonight?
Wow, just with a lot of attrition and, well, trying to stay aware in the early portion of the race, to be honest, I think is the main key component of the of this evening. Because, as you mentioned, it could be 3 to 5 wide down the first straight, down the second straight, even potentially down the main straight to end the first lap. Because of how quickly that lap does go, it's only around 1 minute 13, as we saw in the qualifying session, and that's at a quick lap. So it's very interesting. It will be very interesting tonight to see who's got the best racecraft, and I think it's just going to be who's got the best racecraft that's going to come out on top in terms of those right up the very top, just because they could bottle it with a poor, well, with a little bit of a lapse in concentration or a poor moment. We are just under 10 seconds away now from green flag.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed this evening, and this was true the last time we came to Bahrain. Of course, the Bahrain track we raced on prior was the Grand Prix variant of Sakir, but same result. The Mustangs struggle here. BMW and Aston up front. The first time we came here, it was all Aston in the first two rows, I'm pretty sure. I think Felipe Brecha is in the garage, and I'm unsure what that means for a pulsator. I can see the headlights on that car, but I don't know if he readied up or did not ready up in time. But nevertheless, we're getting ready to go green. Rafael Tuel is going to take the green flag here in sort of the pseudo pole position. Your pole sitter in the pit lane, an inauspicious start to this round of the championship. But we are green for the LMGT sprint here on RCI Fridays. It's a clean getaway for Rafael Huel, but now being challenged by Savic down into turn number one. They're 2x2 now, 3 wide in the second row as the highest placing Mustang getting involved. It's Verstrepen. Verstrepen gets a little bit sideways. That's going to open the door for Van Dries. Van Dries trying to work their way up the inside, and now it's Huel and Vermaak side by side as Savic gets a clean hole shot up into turn number 3.
Yes, and there could be moves continuing. Christopher Streppen coming under pressure for that 4th place. That could be a car down the middle, not quite taking the opportunity and making the move. And Verstreppen, in fact, holding on to the position as it stands. And, well, it's just been... It's been a chaotic start to this race so far, with side-by-side moments almost throughout the first lap of this race, and it looks like it's going to continue down onto the back straight now. Are we going to get any side-by-side action? Not quite, but it is an Aston Martin 1-2-3 at the top. Savic leads Vermaak, leads Huel. We do have somebody down the inside, potentially, not quite going for that move. Is Callum Kerrigan, but at the end of that first lap, it's Savic who leads the way for Mac in second, Huel in third. As you mentioned, there's somebody coming in.
That was one of the McLarens, I'm pretty sure, has come into the pit lane, and is that well? Terry Liggins is in, but it is Callum Kerrigan. So I was wrong. That was not a McLaren. That was 2 Ferraris that came down. The sort of piping, the accent color on the GR Racing Ferrari always throws me off. It looks like front of a McLaren. It is not, but they've come in, and that's very interesting because I don't suspect they've had issue. So one thing we haven't necessarily mentioned is there is no required pit stop in this series. You are limited by the amount of virtual energy and fuel you can take on the car. We have seen on several occasions, both in the dry and in the wet, if you fuel save the entire race, some of these cars can make it, and some have used it to great effect. Miguel Martins, for instance, a few weeks ago, did it to dramatic effect. I wonder, though, if we're seeing cars try and do the long undercut, and yet another one, and that is an Aston coming into the pit lane. Are they trying to do a dramatic undercut right here?
I think very potentially they may well be trying. It is Rafael Huel who came into the pit lane. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that one. A bit more confirmation on what happened with Callum Kerrigan. He had a drive-through penalty, which meant that he had to come into the pit lane, which isn't great on the first lap of the race. And, well, he's going to have to rebuild from that point onwards. We have side-by-side action right up here. Philip Brescia trying to make his way through the field after starting from pit lane. And, well, he's trying to go around the outside. Can he hold on to it? Yes, he can. It's a pretty impressive move, just clinging onto that outside line as long as he possibly could. And that move was made.
Rafael Huel has DNF. Further clarification on the Callum Kerrigan penalty. That would have been for being out of position on the start. We've seen that every single time we've come to Bahrain, at least one car being caught out for one reason or another. Tonight was Callum Kerrigan. They have rejoined the race in 19th in the GR Racing Ferrari. One car that will not rejoin us is, of course, the Aston Martin of Rafael Huel that has DNF'd, and quite unsure why that might be, but that had the hallmarks of either getting a penalty themselves or having some sort of mechanical fault one way or another out of this race will not return. Savic leads Vermaak up front. Verstappen now into third place over Van Dries, Van de Voken, the top five. Behind them, this is the driver that qualified on pole. Felipe Brecha did not get to start there in the Team WRT BMW. This is going to be one long 60 minutes for Mr. Brecha.
Yeah, but he's starting to make his way up the field. 15th is where he sits, and you can tell that he's already faster than his competitors on this grid, and he's just now got to try and take the opportunities. He's had 5 minutes gone by, and he's made his way up to 15th, so that's not a bad start, but he needs to keep that momentum up and needs to try and stay within contention of all of the cars up ahead, which is easier said than done, because of course they will be on more similar pace to what he's able to run, and then that just means that he's going to have to try and go even faster than the leaders, which again, that's another task easier said than done. I think it could be nigh on impossible depending on the pace deficit that they have to him, but he has demonstrated that he's been quickest so far, and he's going to try to demonstrate that he's even quicker down the inside. Can he make his way through as Ibiza squeezed him all the way to that inside line, eventually had to yield to make the corner, and Brescia just showed the guts he had to stay alongside and made his way through.
I got to tell you, if I'm Ibiza there, I don't know why you're doing that. He clearly qualified well up the grid order. And yeah, I know you're trying to save the position, but you're putting yourself in danger to not only have an incident with Breccia, which would be completely unnecessary, but you're also putting yourself in danger to the cars behind. Why not just let him go? If he caught you that quickly in one lap, you've got to use your head in a situation like that, you'd think. But no harm, no foul. Breccia, out of everyone, probably didn't appreciate that. It's like, why is this car in particular in the middle of this field fighting me this hard? But they're entitled to it. They are allowed to fight that hard. Further clarification, Mike Redford, teammate of Raphael Huell, says that Huell was complaining of tech issues the other day. It might have been that. Yeah, it definitely did look like tech issues. You wouldn't normally come down the pit lane like that without a penalty. He did not have one as far as we know. DNF, 20 cars remaining as they fan out down the pit straight here at Sakir. Nearly 3 wide that time, and you love to see that, don't you, Joseph? Because cars are getting runs off the final corner, they're drafting, but you're also allowed to defend a little bit, and everyone does it a little bit differently. Some, like that, go all the way to the inside of the racetrack, the 2 BMWs in the background. Some sort of just shade you over a little bit, and huge dive here. Kenny corner, I think he's going to overcook it just a little bit, and he is, but he might just be able to hold on to the spot, and he will.
Yes, what a move there from Brescia on Danny Bull, and that is just incredible stuff. The way that he was just able to soak up that pressure and move up a position, and getting a little bit of a flash, potentially saying good move, potentially saying well, should have been a little bit closer. But yeah, it's yeah, that's one of those moves that he will be very happy with. Danny Bull looking like he's getting closer out of the final corner. But Brescia getting even closer to Scotty out of the final corner, and tries to get the run on the Aston Martin on the exit as they head down the main straight. He's going to get a lovely dose of slipstream that he's going to try and make full advantage of. And he is really sitting right in behind now and waiting for that opportunity to strike the defence to the inside for Scotty. The outside line then for Brescia as he brakes later, tries to get the move. The run out of the exit will be Scotty's, and he's able to hold on to that position for another lap. So just demonstrating to the cars behind as well, you don't need to fight just like Ibiza did on that previous lap. You are able to just go side by side like that and defend as inside, who's all right to the inside, loses the rear and loses the position to Ibiza in the background, but that got very, very close.
Yeah, Ball just sort of lost the nose of the car on the inside curve that let Ibiza through, and that was much to the light of one of the triplets of 46 Team WRT cars. Quite frustrating for Ball there. Will feel like they were in a bad spot there, but nevertheless, they continue to go up. And to Angela Scotty's credit, they have been pretty electric this entire series, driving up through the field and also holding their position. And, this is where it only gets tougher if you're Felipe Breccia at this point. But going back to the Raphael Huell DNF, I hear that you have further clarification on what might have happened to the Raphael Huell car.
Yeah, Raphael Huell had some weird technical glitch where he couldn't hear what was going on, as that's a poor exit from Tom Watson. He may well come under pressure from these few cars. We might get that 5 wide moment you were speaking about. Not quite. It's 4 wide. It's filtered to 3 wide. What a move there from Madam Minsman to get up. But wow, that was incredibly close.
Woo! Okay, I held my breath right there. I'm glad you were talking because I would have stopped right there. Heart almost stopped too as they somehow get it sorted out. Back down to single file, down the back straight and into the short chute. But my goodness, that could have been absolutely ugly. And if there's one thing that I think highlights this simulator and this group of drivers this season, we have seen very little car-on-car incident. The majority of incident has been single car. And that's what I'm talking about. It's so easy to get into one another. Brecha able to keep it off of Van der Linde there. And that's kind of highlights what I'm talking about. They're racing close. They're given a little bit of space, and that's all that really matters. Martin Lawrence, by the way, qualified 19th, is up into 10th, but he might get tagged here, and he will. Martin Lawrence gets tagged in the Proton Mustang as they end up 3 wide into turn number 1.
Yeah, that's really not ideal. And round goes one.
That's Van der Linde.
Spins round and drops down the field. That is not what you'd want to see at this point, especially with how aggressive the fighting was. You mentioned that it was single car incidents that dominated, and Chris Van der Linde,
I shouldn't have opened my mouth.
It was a single car incident, and he's now just trying to recover himself. But actually, no, it wasn't a single car incident. You may well have just jinxed it. I thought that he'd lost the rear on the exit. It may well have been contact there between the 2 BMWs. We're going to get a better look at it as they head down towards the first corner on the racetrack. It was very close between the two. Then the huge send down the inside that tagged Lawrence just up ahead. Lawrence doing well. The 2 BMWs doing well to actually avoid that incident in the first place. And then on the exit, potentially contact between the 2 BMWs. And, well, round goes Van der Linde.
I think Scotty just overcooked it, Joseph, if I'm honest, and got in there and collected them, or as we like to say where I'm from in the U.S., ran in there and got him. And rather unfortunately, that is exactly what happened. These 2 cars side by side in front of them, and just a completely innocent bystander is Martin Lawrence minding his own business. Scotty overcooks the inside of the braking zone 3 wide into Lawrence, and that ends up somehow in contact off of turn number 2 with Van der Linde going around.
Yeah, not ideal for Van der Linde, who's now not the first driver who has to recover their race, and most likely won't be the last, and actually sits in the pit lane. So we could be seeing, and I think we have just seen, a DNF there from Van der Linde. Unfortunate, because it was just such an unfortunate incident, but you get caught up in those sometimes, and that is racing. Well, I mean, I was trying to go over the Raphael Huell incident before and what actually happened with that, and so I'll go back to it, and I'm expecting Reece Wilkinson to do an absolute audacious send into the first corner. Anyway, Van der Linde, no, not Van der Linde, it was for Raphael Huell audio issues. He could hear the menus, but not the in-game sound itself, and so he decided to call it quits, which is, well, it's one of those issues where it can affect the way you drive, and so it was playing it safe to retire from the session for Raphael Huell, which will be disappointing after such a good qualifying performance. But he will be promised by that performance that he had, and he'll most likely try and attack once again in the finale. And, well, Mike Redford was right. It was tech issues that Huell was facing, and, well, that is what it is. Reece Wilkinson on the back of Van der Weyken, trying to make a move on the number 46 around the outside, and actually might get that move done as soon as I first mention it. So Reece Wilkinson around the outside. Van der Weyken, not the greatest exit out of the sector 2, out of turn number 9, and Reece Wilkinson makes his way up into 5th place.
Reece Wilkinson doing an excellent job here in the JMW Motorsports Ferrari, and I think you're spot on with that assessment. I think just got a little bit wrong exiting or entering the corner to Van der Weyken, and just gave up the spot here. Peter Varga finds themselves in this fight with Brecha and Martin Lawrence. Now, Brecha and Martin Lawrence are friends off of the racetrack, fellow countrymen, and They're sometimes friends on the racetrack. They're sometimes teammates. They're not tonight. Varga's going to nearly run off the racetrack, almost in defense. They all somehow make it. Looks like Martin Lawrence is a little bit of a cork in the bottle up into ninth place. Remarkable progress, 10 spots gained since the initial start of the race. But Breccia looking to come back, and this is going to be the hardest pass thus far, Joseph. Passing your friend, your sometimes teammate, and a fellow competitor that's relatively on your pace that also started in the back.
Yeah, it's been an interesting race, this one, with the drivers who started at the back sort of making their way towards the front. Those who started at the front, though, seeming to face issues. Raphael Huell being the first one, and we could be seeing a switch for said position right at the very front of the field as Zach Vermaak and Roman Savage head across the start-finish straight. Not separated by much. Vermaak, the car in behind. Savage, the car in front. Not much to tell the difference between the two. They're both number 27 Aston Martins, but of course, one ahead and one behind, as you can tell by the overlay who is who. And we've just had another DNF coming out from Andy Cotton, our third DNF of the evening, which is not ideal. And we might be having another one as Angela Scotti comes in, potentially for a pit, or potentially for a DNF as well. I'm hoping that it's going to be a pit.
It's a pit stop, I hope.
We'll have to see. Yeah, I mean, 15 minutes into the session, why not?
Yeah, they were up on the jacks for a moment. They dropped it back down. They're just replenishing the energy. This must be when Angela thinks that they can make it to the end from here comfortably, and it makes sense. About 15 minutes into the race, that's usually around the time at the end whenever you run out of fuel if you've not been fuel saving. So Scotty into the pit lane. This is strategic in my mind for the number 27 Aston Martin. They will continue around assuredly as the fight for the lead continues. Vermaak trying very much to take the position from Savick. Will he do it here down into one?
He's going to try as he goes around the outside, switches to the inside line and does make that move into the lead of the race. So we've had a switch for the first time since the first lap. Savage sacrifices that lead to Vermaak, and Zach Vermaak up into the lead of this race now. And we could be seeing another move as very wide into the first corner. And Philip Breccia actually hands the position back, so potentially something happened between the two that Breccia feels a bit guilty about, or potentially he may well have just got the first section all wrong and just allowed him back through. But now 10th still held by Philip Breccia.
Kevin Boss adding further clarification to the earlier issue Huell was having with not having any sort of engine or race sounds. Boss, I think, has done that before themselves, saying it really is a nightmare. You notice how much you listen to the engine and how much you're missing your shifts. That's absolutely true. I've had sound issues myself before while running races, and he's absolutely spot on. You don't realize how much you rely on sound in that sort of situation. Racing is as much auditory as it is visual a lot of the time. It's feel as well, but our feel in sim racing is a little bit different than the real thing. I think we would all agree, but absolutely spot on take there. Danny Ball trying to defend is going to go nearly all the way down to the pit wall and gets as close as you like and gives up the outside, but that would be the preferred side if they were going to give up one. But I'm going to tell you, they're nose to nose and they're bumping right here into one.
They were. Danny Ball has been racing pretty aggressively today. He wants to hold on to those positions. He feels as though he deserves to be up there, and well, whether he does or not, those moves are very, very aggressive. And in the end, they see him in 14th out of, I believe it's 20. No, it's not 20. It's 18 left in this race, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's going to be a good one with all the drivers, and of course the switch for that race lead coming out just on that previous lap. And so it could be a huge scrap on our hands for many, many different positions. Tom Watts has a car in front and a car in behind, and Lawrence is going to go for the move out of the final corner. Brescia's waiting in the background to pounce as well, and they're going to try and work together to get past Watts, or potentially try and carry Watts through and gets past Mimsman as they head down to the first corner. Lawrence holds the inside line as they head down to one. Mimsman is just going to be ahead and just going to watch these two, as it's going to be late on the brakes for Lawrence, but no, he backs out at the last second. And, well, he couldn't have really backed out any later if he was ever going to back out. And in the end, judged pretty well from the Ford, and he stays in 9th place, but could be looking for another move out of the next corner, as he looked as though potentially he was trying to set himself up for it. But Tom Watts loses one position, then loses another. Through goes Brescia.
Yeah, he won't really care about that. Tom probably left the door open on purpose right there. Of course, Tom Watts contesting the AM championship. He's racing Van de Voken, who is up in 6th place, but it's in Tom Watts's best sort of position that if Breccia and Lawrence both go up there and pass Van de Voken and bring them down closer to him. Of course, they both got to get through Mimsman, as you just said, but even still, doesn't change anything for his points tally, and might eventually help him. Look at this. This is the position change since the start. Breccia is down 8 because they would have, of course, started on pole, but we all know they started 21st, actually, in the pit lane. Martin Lawrence up 11 spots. Breccia is going to be up about 9 or 10, despite what the graphic says. Savic has still hauled off Vermac up in front of this field somehow after a very nice earlier defense. In fact, Vestrepa has now passed Vermac, and this is why Zach Vermac, in the heart of racing Aston, is coming to a dignified failure here.
Yes, Zach Vermac is not going to finish this race, and that is unfortunate. He scrapped up the top a lot at the top of that one, but now out of the race and out of contention. Savic is going to be the leader of this one, 2.6 ahead of Verstappen. And we'll see what actually happened with Zach Vermac, as not 100% sure. Has his engine died potentially? Looks as though it must have been something along those lines for him to have retired there.
Yeah, the engine's dead. You can hear it. The engine is dead. We had this issue a few weeks ago, Joseph, and it wasn't really as big of a deal last week, but it has happened to Raphael Huell. It happened to a couple of cars at Interlagos as well. The engine dying, what they do is you have a certain amount of blanking or taping, as we'd call it in the States. You can blank off the oil cooler and the brakes and the engine, etc. in LMU, and sometimes they get a little bit too aggressive with it and they cook the components, and I suspect that is a oil cooler that has been cooked, which has led to an engine failure for Zach Vermac after contesting the lead of the race just a few laps ago.
Yeah, very unfortunate there, and that's just, it's one of those things I think you have to consider when you're picking the car, as well as we've got to move. Philip Brescia is just sitting in behind Lawrence, going down the inside of Mimsman. Lawrence, can he get through? Mimsman is going to try and hold on to that outside line, but Lawrence does make his way through, and the slipstream does beckon for Brescia as well. So it could be a double move on Mimsman down the main straight, as Lawrence looks like he's got that one sealed. And now it's just these two going side by side. It's the inside line for Brescia down through Mimsman. Can he get through? Late breaking move, but he's going to be able to get this one done. That's a very pretty move. Just down the inside, giving just enough space. And that is going to be Brescia up another position. And he's going to try and continue his way up.
Beats it down the pit lane, a little bit of an aggressive move there. I wonder if maybe they were getting a drink of water or something. I know I've done that before, coming down the pit lane at pit lane speed, but he did not actually come to a stop there. I was more worried about him weaving in pit lane and what that may be related to, but distracted driving and all that. But he came down pit lane and did not stop. So are we to believe, Joseph, that was a drive-through penalty for something he just served?
I don't think it can be anything else, really, unless he just forgot to pull over to the pit box, which is entirely possible. He's been there, done that, but I think it's the most likely scenario is that it was, in fact, a drive-through penalty, which is very unfortunate for him to have suffered at that point in the race, and that puts him out of contention with those that he was fighting with before, especially Philipp Brescher, who he was fighting so hard with before, and now that battling feels even more pointless. These down the bottom of the field, they qualified down the bottom, and they are down the bottom of those who haven't come into the pits yet. Ryan Cassidy behind Varga and ahead of Ball, who's just trying to rebuild his race and just sits in behind these two at the moment, Cassidy and Varga. There's not been much said about them so far this race, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more said about them in this battle than before. But Cassidy just following through, trying to soak up the pressure from Ball at the same time as coming under pressure, or trying to pressure even Peter Varga. So, well, these three going to get close, I think.
Communication from Zach Vermack in our YouTube chat confirming our suspicion. Engine overheated, expletive. Yeah, I that's very fair. It's the worst thing, too, chasing down the leader, having a chance to win the race, and that championship implications here for Zach Vermack with another expired engine in this series. We have seen our fair share of them. Danny Ball here in 12th place, looking pretty good, looking really close on the virtual energy meter as well. Joseph, you recall, mentioned earlier, we have known these cars to be able to make it if you save throughout the entire race. It is possible. Several occasions have drivers been able to do it. I think it's clear by looking at these energy meters and looking at the throttle traces on the right hand side of the screen. I think there's several drivers in this field that are trying to do exactly that.
Well, we'll see how the strategy does pan out throughout the race. I mean, it is going to be a fascinating one, and I'm particularly keeping an eye on Scotty coming in so early in the race, and well, it's a different one for all of them to try to contend with. Of course, this circuit not necessarily the most punishing in terms of the actual circuit layout itself, but the heat is what's going to get to the drivers.
Well, it already got to one of the engines, Zach Vermack's engine in particular, but I know what you mean. I take your meaning, and it's the hardest way to race. You tell a racing car driver to go out there and race full tilt. That's their sort of comfort zone most of the time, is to go 98, 99% all the time. You tell them to back off and give me or save me a little on every corner. You're putting them in uncharted territory, choppy waters there. How do you do it? How much do you do it? Some drivers are better at it than others. Some can't do it at all. God knows that I've never been too good at saving fuel. It's lost me more than a handful of races over the years, but some just revel in it. They can find the extra little places to maximize efficiency without giving up a whole bunch of lap time. Of course, it's a delta you're working in. If you're giving up too much time, it's better to take the stop anyway if you go over that pit stop delta time. So it's a balancing act. So on top of trying to drive the car and maximize, you're also trying to be efficient. You're trying to do a lot of things at a lot of times. And Ryan Cassidy has spun the D station car. Did he have help? I don't know. But he is certainly waiting to rejoin in a safe manner. Very difficult part of the racetrack right there. Cars coming right at them. But Ryan Cassidy rejoining there. We'll see. Was there contact here?
Doesn't look like it's going to be, I don't think. It could just be a self-made spin.
We got over the curb there. Nothing strange here.
Track limits in both those corners. There we go.
Just went too far over to the left. Yeah.
That's an unfortunate one there for Cassidy. Just, I mean, he just ran slightly off of the circuit and slightly past the curbing, and that really is what did him. I think he might have got one of his right-sided tyres caught on that curbing, and that was what span him round and now dropped him out of contention with where he was fighting in before. Obviously not the most coveted of positions where he was, but every position counts, especially if you're a racing driver.
100%. Doesn't matter if it's first or not last. You want that position. Philipp Brescher has made their way around Martin Lawrence a little while ago and has left them in the proverbial dust, no pun intended, considering we are in Bahrain. But Felipe Brecha looking to make the move back inside the top 5 and will do that. Van der Voken kind of obliges, and the position is changed for the team WRT 46 up into 5th place over the sister but slightly different liveried team WRT BMW. Brecha in the top 5. Savic enjoys a 3.5-second lead over Christoph Strepe. By far and away the highest running Ford. Martin Lawrence from 19th has gone all the way up into 7th place. Remarkable progress from our one-time championship leader. Felipe Brecha has driven off of the racing circuit. No idea how you make it that far. Have you ever done that, Joseph? Because he was basically he's halfway back to Saudi Arabia, I thought, there.
Well, I mean, no comment if you've seen me race, which luckily you haven't yet in RCI. I'm sure you will soon. But if you've seen me race, yes, I have done that many a time. But it's one of those where there's a lapse of concentration, and that is exactly what has befell Felipe Brecha, who is now in 6th place. Not a bad comeback, though, it's fair to say. And well, with that being the only real mistake of the run, we can't really begrudge him.
I mean, no, you're absolutely right. You make one little mistake, and just because our broadcaster, Ted Edwards, doesn't miss a thing, it gets picked up on the live cameras. As I was saying, the gap absolutely going in the favor of Ronan Savic, who is basically led this entire race, enjoys the biggest lead that they've had thus far. It's a great race for Christoph Strepe, who sort of hovers around the top 5 position. P2 would be absolutely massive for them. Van Driesch in 3rd, a well-raced race for them. Van Driesch is the quiet killer in the top 5 most weeks. And, of course, we have Reese Wilkinson, who is very silently the only Ferrari in the top 5 as well. Van der Voken, who is trying to win the AM Championship, a solid top 5 will certainly help them do exactly that. Ibiza comes back down pit lane this time, but this is an actual pit stop that they're doing. Just over the halfway point in today's race, want to invite all of you to like, subscribe, and follow over on the various Race RCI or the RCI TV channels, and invite you to go to racerci.com and check out our list of events. Felipe Brecha continuing to be contested for the top 5 position. Monday championship, brand new, coming at you in just a few weeks' time. Mini British GT 2025. We're hitting all the British racetracks, and of course, a 90-minute mid-season special at Spa-Francorchamps. There's 2 30-minute races, 60-minute races, and 90-minute races, different formats throughout the series. We're hitting all the British tracks. Martin Lawrence spun here off of what I believe is the final turn, turn 11. Just losing it there. That would be the second car we've seen do that in as many laps. No real damage done to the car. Yeah, just gets off there into the dirty part of the racetrack. Oh, he actually did hit it quite a bit, you know. But Mini British GT in Assetto Corsa Competizione, your choice, GT3 or GT4. We're hitting all of the British GT racetracks. Donington shows up twice in 2 different formats. 90-minute mid-season at Spa, but 2 30-minute sprint races for some of the rounds, the typical 60-minute races, and of course you have as well the 90-minute race, as I said. Ibiza doing a really respectful thing there. Saw a gaggle of cars coming, elected, because I believe they were being blue flagged anyway, elected to basically stop to let them go through so that he didn't cause any further bother. Yeah, ACC Mondays, still time to sign up for Mini British GT, just about full in 1 split. The more of you that sign up, the more likely there is that there is a split number 2, and you'll be removed from a reserve to a second split. So split 1 just about full, looking to open up a second split. That's how popular Mini British GT is. If iRacing's more your thing, the RSS Endurance Series continues in about 1 week's time on Saturday. That's going to be a very fun round. We're going to Watkins Glen, 6 hours of the Glen on iRacing. Of course, you have your choice of GTP or GT3 cars on that one. Enter as a team, enter solo. Doesn't matter to us. We'd love to have you over on iRacing with us. That series has been ridiculous. Every race has come down to it somehow, some way. Of course, you can also sign up for the ACC World Tour next round in, July actually at Suzuka, but perhaps more closely, we have LMGT Sprint Series, which you're currently watching. You can join us for the finale. We'll be at Imola next week to crown a couple of champions. As a reminder, you can join any championship mid-season by going to racerci.com and signing up. Special shout out to our partners, RSS, Ready Set Sim, Coach Dave Delta, Greenman Gaming, Moser Racing, and a special shout out to Motorsport UK. Joseph, and with that out of the way, I noticed that gap between Verstappen and Savic is coming back down. It was 4.5 seconds. It's under 3.5 now.
Yeah, it appears as though Savage in that first part of that stint looked like he was pushing to try and build that gap to those behind. He saw an opportunity because Vermaak had lost that time, but now he's potentially fuel saving, and you can see that Christoph Verstappen is pushing and trying to get back into that slipstream. 0.6 of a second he was quicker on that last lap, and the gap hangs around 3.3 seconds, but it's now down to under 3 seconds. So through the first corner through the second corner even went Verstappen, and it does appear as though Ronan Savage is trying to employ lift and coast.
That's going to be very interesting. This is what these races come down to. You get these fights and the two completely different strategies. I think you're right, Joseph. I think that's exactly what's going on. We'll get an idea as we come down to this section of the racetrack. We'll see. I believe we're in the final turn. We are. Yeah, he's absolutely clutching in the car, saving. He's not even letting off the throttle and idling it. He's clutching in to completely kill the RPM. He is saving massively here as Ronan Savic in the heart of racing Aston. And we both believe, I think it's very clear on the timing and scoring, that Verstappen isn't doing that at all. The problem is, I don't think either of these cars can make it to the end, but I don't think that's the goal, Joseph. I think the goal is to have to take as little fuel as possible.
That's always the goal, because then you can be quicker right at the start, especially with those who are competing up at the top like Verstappen and Savage. And that explains why they are at the top as it stands still, because they pushed early on in that stint. Verstappen losing a bit of energy in comparison to Savage, so there's still a bit left in the tank for Savage. But well, considering the amount of clutching he's doing, I'd say that one tank still has a little bit left. The other one is looking concerning.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Zach Vermaak in chat is already doing the math on how he could possibly still beat Martin Lawrence in the championship. Of course, Lawrence has had a spot of bother just a few moments ago, but Vermaak's trying to do the maths, as you might expect, and figure out what he needs to do next week to take the championship home at Imola. I think he's arrived at the best possible strategy, and that's just win the race, something I think Zach is very possible to do. It'd be interesting to see because we don't know exactly how the points work in LMU. If this was an ACC race, you'd have to complete 85% of the race to even get championship points. Obviously, Vermaak didn't do that tonight. But that may not be how it works in LMU. The point system might be slightly different on how it is awarded after a DNF or due to completion. So we'll have to play that by ear. Zach also said, perhaps a bit humorously, they're not going to tape up the car at all. They're going to run zero tape next week, and hopefully that does the trick. Peter Varga under fire here from Ball. These two have been together earlier on. This battle continuing, but now for a top 10 spot for the moment.
Yeah, at the moment, at least, because we have drivers in the pits. Terry Liggins, another one in the Ferrari, and well, we'll see where they come out in relation. It'll all filter out, but this is the sort of time where you can't really trust the timesheets, because they're not always telling the full story. And with all the drivers with all the drivers on mixed strategies, some in, some out, and we'll see where they filter out, as Verstappen on that last lap was almost an entire second quicker than Savage. So while Savage is fuel saving very badly, or not badly, but very very aggressively. It's looking pretty good for Verstappen at the moment, in comparison at least. But of course, we don't know the actual fuel levels in each of the cars. And into the pits comes Danny Ball from the back of the one in front, and well, he's going to drop down a few positions past Kerrigan. He already goes, and Ryan Cassidy is going to make his way through as well. But yeah, Savage leading by only 1.6 seconds now ahead of Verstappen.
Do believe this is a penalty for Danny Ball. I don't think this is a pit road speeding penalty. I think this is a track limits penalty. They have exceeded their maximum allowance of track limit points this evening, and thus were given a drive-through. So that doesn't even count as a pit stop for Danny Ball. That will ruin their night that they had going, a pretty decent one, all things told. This the fight for P1 to P2. It was nearly a quarter of a second difference in favor of second place Christoph Strepe in the Proton Mustang, as Savick continues to save. We have seen this be the end-all be-all in these races before. The driver out front has a pretty decent lead and gives all of that up to save, and that difference in fueling, it's only a second or two in the pit lane, but that's all it takes when considering how close they are now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's different approaches to the race, and well, the approach that the car in the lead has taken appears to be the wrong one at the moment, with the Ford in behind able to just make that gap close, and ever closer as we continue on through this one. Zeno van der Driesch in third place, and he's having a pretty decent race, all things considered as well. Not talked too much about it, but yeah, he's not that far off of those leading two, but those leading two getting closer and closer together.
This is Zeno's MO, is just having quiet, complete races, staying out of trouble, and getting a good result out of it. And I dare say it may not be a podium this evening, because Felipe Brecha is right behind them, driving all the way from dead last. 21st place, could potentially be on the podium. I was doing the math. It's about 14 seconds, the gap. That might be a little bit too much to ask in 18 and a half minutes now. But still, you have to say, that is incredibly remarkable. There have been times in this race where Brecha was more than a second quicker than anyone else on the racetrack. And I think this race would obviously have looked very different had he not started from the pit lane. How do you feel about this, Joseph? If this was you, if you were Felipe Brecha, how do you feel about this? You've driven through the entire field. You're likely going to get a podium out of it, but knowing how much pace you had, you could have won by a mile. Instead, you're unlikely to win at all. But still, you drove so well. How do you quantify that?
I think there's part of him that needs to remain grounded and remember that actually the pace that he's had has probably come as a result of him being so far back, and he's just he's dropped a gear, so to speak, and he's just continuing with that momentum up. Whereas if he was at the top, he wouldn't have quite had that pace, because he wouldn't have felt as under pressure as he is right now, and not as under pressure as he's putting himself under throughout this race. So I think there's an element of him that has to remember that. But on the other hand, of course, there is the base layer of course, he's going to be absolutely devastated with the way that this race has gone, and the way that it was just one issue that he had at the very start of the race that is going to cost him. And it's what happens with the beginning of the race having issues. There's not really much opportunity for you to come back, because of the fact that despite you being quick, you're not quite as quick as those in front, or you are, but you don't quite have that advantage of being in the lead. And well, if he's able to bridge that 10-second gap that he's got to Verstappen right now, I'd be incredibly impressed.
Of course, we still have a pit stop to do, or we assume there's a pit stop to do for all of the top runners. Savick has put a second back on Verstappen, so that either means Savick has picked up the pace, or Verstappen started to save a little bit in direct response to Savick. allowing him to close back in. But we focus on the fight for P3. Down the pit straight this time. He looks a little bit to the left. He's going to go further to the left. Not bitten is Van Driesche. Doesn't defend at all down into turn number 1. Maybe goes a little bit wide, but not nearly wide enough. Puts his number 31 exactly where he needs it to be. These may be sister cars in real life, but these are not teammates right now. Brecha and Zeno Van Driesche fighting. Oh, a huge cell job down the inside. Looks like Van Driesche just lets him go a little bit wide. Will not matter. And Philippe Brecha has gone from P21 to the podium.
Yes, Philippe Brecha having an incredible race, and he is the driver of the day despite... or he is my driver of the day, at least. I'm not sure how you feel about it, despite the fact that he started from the very back of the field, or not even on the field in the first place. So it's impressive for him to keep that momentum up, and he's going to try and close that gap towards the end of the race. He has closed it by half a second on that previous lap, but 15 minutes left to go, I think. Unless he's able to gain, what would it be, a second and a half, a minute? I think I would be very impressed if he was able to gain that time. But with the momentum he's had and with the fuel saving that Savic has had to do, I wouldn't be surprised if he did gain to some extent towards the end of this race.
I would be curious if he can maybe get P2. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but I'd very much love to see it. For me, I asked you the question, how do you quantify this? For me, this is kind of a win. You can't dwell on the fact that there was a mistake. I know as a racing driver, you do that. You go, oh, if I'd have done this different, if I would have done this slightly different, and that's the things you think about. But the reality is that isn't what happened. What happened was you started dead last and you got a podium position. Like you said, Joseph, I think you're very spot on. You got to be grounded. And third place after that, I would have assumed, regardless of what pace they had, they'd be dead in the water, especially at a track like this where there's not a ton of opportunities, just 11 corners. As a matter of fact, a lot of straightaways here at Sakir Outer Circuit. So I wouldn't have expected this at all. You're back to the podium. I agree with you. You got to stay grounded. You got to be happy with that, even if you don't gain any more. But like you said, is gaining on the top two. We'll see if he gets there, and we'll see what the strategy for the top two has in store here in the final 14 minutes.
Yeah, and this is going to be what decides or loses this race, what they've gone for, and whichever one is the right strategy. Savic, he was fuel saving so aggressively earlier on. He's built up that gap of 4.6 now seconds, as that is the BMW of Van der Weyken in pit lane. So Brecha is going to continue on in that podium and is the lead BMW. Van Dreesche is in second in the BMW standings, and Van der Weyken is going to come out in third unless he loses a lot of time and drops behind Ball. But yeah, they are in the pit lane. So is Peter Varga from the mid-pack coming in and changing, I presume, a set of tyres and potentially some fuel as well, just to get to the end of this race. But Savic holds that gap ahead of Verstappen at the moment. Came down on that last lap, not by that much. 3 points was what's happened to Verstappen. He is coming to pit lane, and well, I said the gap wasn't coming down. It's gone straight back up, and Verstappen dives into the pits. Brecha is up into second place. He's 11.2 behind Savic, and now is his opportunity to really try and push. Brecha is going to come out behind that back marker, who gets out of the way pretty quickly, and he's pretty happy with that one there. Tries to continue on. That was Peter Varga, who was the one coming out of the pit lane, and coming out of the pit lane is the other Ford of Christoph Verstappen, who was in second place. He's going to come out in about P8, I think. Yeah, he's going to be P8. That Verstappen is going to come out of the pit lane, and he's not got any pressure from Callum Kerrigan behind or any pressure from Laurent in ahead, so he also has a great opportunity to push.
Well, I don't have the best frame of reference for time sat still in the pit lane, but my instinct is telling me that was not a particularly quick stop for second place Christoph Verstappen, and they may end up making this a fight for P2. We'll have to see how it goes on. Ryan Cassidy down to the attention of their team. These are all scheduled pit stops here for those that couldn't fuel save enough. Will we even see a single car able to fuel save? If there was one track where I thought that it would probably be impossible, it's probably this one. You're just on the throttle so much around Secure Outer Circuit that I just don't know if anyone is able to make it. It becomes more of a job of, as we discussed earlier, seeing how much you can save and how little time you actually have to sit in the pit lane taking fuel rather than trying to eliminate a stop altogether. But you can see the energy meter there completely gone. That car is going to be down on power a little bit as well because of this, and they will limp it around, and that's not something you want to do around a circuit like Secure Outer. So they're going to come around slightly underpowered, I would have imagined, when they completely run out. And I would imagine we're going to see this car down the pit lane this time. We have seen some run with no virtual energy, and of course you can run out of energy, Joseph, but you cannot finish the race without energy, because if you don't have any virtual energy when you finish a race, you get a hefty penalty. Very gingerly into the pit lane was Ronan Savick that time, to the attention of the team. And I dare say this stop will be quicker. That was not down to pit lane speed, Joseph. That was speeding in the pit lane for Felipe Breccia. I would wager it.
Well, Felipe Breccia is going to, I think, regret every single thing that he's done in the pit lane today, starting from the pits first and then, speeding into the pit lane. So I think that could be your battle for P2 claims completely dead in the water. So that is not what you would have wanted to see if you made the prediction of Brescia being up there, and it's not what you're going to want to see if you are Brescia as well. And that's really not ideal from the WRT, as we will see just under 10 minutes left in the clock, and that is going to be a penalty heading Brescia's way. So he's going to have to come straight back in.
No. Well, that's not what you wanted to see. From the back to the front, and now back down pit lane again. An unforced error for Felipe Breccia. That is going to dash their podium hopes, as they will have to come down before this race is over with. Routine stop for Tom Watts. That looked pretty good for the Inception Racing McLaren. And it looked pretty speedy indeed. So Verstappen, who did lose an additional second in the pit stop cycle there to Savick. Their pit stop wasn't quite as long as I thought it was, but still was longer than Savick. Breccia with the pit stop mistake. Van Driesch also clear and good. Wilkinson in 5th place. Some of these positions are going to change when Breccia has to do the drive-through, but Ronan Savick has controlled this race, and it looks like 2 races in Bahrain, and both of them dominated by Aston.
Yeah, which is it's perfect for Aston Martin, really, as it seems to be the car to be in, unless your name is Raphael Huell, in which case it's certainly not the car to be in. And well, the one that retired earlier as well is not going to be ideal. So Raphael Huell having those issues last week, Vermac having the issues this week, and well, dare I say it, it is a gamble to be in that Aston Martin. It is the quickest car, but whether it's going to last till the end is a whole nother question. Brescia now out of the pit lane. He served his penalty, and he comes out in the pack once again. I think that's going to be 6th place. He's on the inside of the corner as he goes into the first, and comes out of the other end of it in that 6th place, just ahead of Lawrence.
Van de Voken and Martin Lawrence fighting each other. Breccia dumped back into their lap. This is sort of a rehash of a battle that happened nearly 35 minutes ago, but what's old is new again.
Yes, and that is exactly what has happened between these drivers. They're going to come and, relight the fire, as it were, and we'll see how aggressive we'll see how aggressive Brescia is in trying to build up that gap once again, as Lawrence tries to fight with Van der Weyken towards the end of this race now. We've got just under 7 minutes to go, and you've got the BMW fighting away with the Ford for position. And this one could get very close up to the line. They're only a second as well behind Brescia, who's trying to close that gap up to minimum 1.8 seconds. The gap between the two, and I'm expecting that to come down even more over the next few laps, and especially over the next few sectors as Brescia really pushes flat out. He's got nothing really to lose in this race, and so he's going to go all held for leather.
Speaking of that, Martin Lawrence taking an opportunistic move down into turn number 1. Van de Velken went completely wide. No idea why. Just looked like they missed the turn-in point, the braking point. Martin Lawrence up to P7. That's exactly what the doctor ordered. There's a little bit of contact right there, but I don't know how you feel about that, Joseph. But, I mean, where I'm from, the cars have fenders for a reason. You may see that differently, though.
Well, it's one of those little debates you can have about making contact. I personally love the cars looking pretty. So any time that there's a bit of contact, it makes me tense up a little bit. But it is what it is, and I understand that it is racing and it's not a parade. So these sorts of things do happen as well. But preferably we could avoid it if possible, and then you can take good pictures of the cars as they head back to the pit boxes. That was what I had at Silverstone, at least, when I went there a few weeks ago. I watched the feeder series race, and well, the GB3 cars were very pretty before the race and a bit roughed up afterwards, even though there was no contact.
Well, I'm the world's biggest hypocrite, because I will sit here and I will preach till I'm blue in the face that, look, the cars have fenders, and you know, this isn't a non-contact sport. This is very much a contact sport. But the second it's my race car and my team, don't you mess up my race car. Absolutely not. You don't go out there. We don't race like that. We don't do stuff like that. So, you know, it's a little bit of a hypocritical situation. It is fine as long as it's not my team and my race car. Otherwise, Peter Varga almost thought he had a little bit of a look there up into 10th place. Callum Kerrigan, that car looks very unsettled. Remember, they had an unscheduled trip down the pit lane earlier, but somehow still finds themselves up into the 10th place position. But now under fire from Peter Varga's Proton Mustang for the final spot in the top 10.
Yeah, and you know what Peter Varga's like. He's going to be desperate to get this 10th place and giving
almost
giving
on cue there.
Flash.
Flashback. They're communicating. They're communicating.
Well, there we go.
I like to decode. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I like to decode headlights. That was Varga saying, "Hey, I'm coming for you," and that was Callum Kerrigan saying, "Yeah, I see you, but I also don't care."
Well, I don't think it was that. I think it was a bit more curt and a bit more rude, in my opinion, than that would have been.
Well, I had to, keep it, advertiser friendly. Yeah, advertiser friendly. That's what it was for the crowd. But you're absolutely right. That's not what they actually said, but that's what the subtitles would have said on the BBC before the watershed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll see what happens in this battle.
Oh.
But it's certain that, well, what's happened to Milan van der Weyken?
I don't know, but something surely happened there. We're going to try and get a replay and figure out if this was a solo incident, or maybe they run up on the back of somebody. I don't suspect they have. Perhaps a solo mistake then. We've seen a couple of cars do that, right, Joseph? Just get on the curb or hit it wrong, and they lose all their momentum, and I suspect that's what's happened here. And it was.
I didn't even think that was the curb. I think that was down the straight, and that's really not nice there for Milan van der Weyken, especially with not long left in the race. He's potentially got damage there, and he's going to have to manage it because there's no way he's going to be able to justify a trip down pit road. But yeah, he's going to have to firm it to the end of the race, it seems.
Kevin Boss giving us his opinion of fender contact in closed-wheeled cars. Rubbing is racing as long as the sim doesn't ping you off massively, as some sims do. Luckily, that's not a problem in LMU, and you can actually get your elbows out. But steering, suspension damage, definitely for the Van de Weyken car here.
Yeah, and he is going to have to go on to the end, unfortunately. Just under 2 minutes left in the race, so likely 2 laps to go in this race. And
well, dear.
It's going to be a real struggle to the end for the BMW, who's raced really well here, to be fair. And it's a disappointing way to end the race, but it's a necessary way to end the race in 8th place, because if he comes into the pit lane, I reckon he drops down P12, P13, something like that. So not great there. Peter Varga desperately trying to make his way past Callum Kerrigan, as I mentioned that he was going to, and he gets the run out of the final corner and tries to get past the Ferrari down the main straight. They're so close together. Varga is going to try and match the movements of Callum Kerrigan. Where is Callum going to try and defend? He's going to try and squeeze him all the way to the inside, all the way into the pit wall, and in the end, Callum Kerrigan does squeeze him successfully, goes around the outside into turn 1, and Varga just sees it as a bit of a decoy move, tries to get the exit out of the second corner, doesn't work. Callum Kerrigan went so deep into the first that he could get the run into the second one and keep that momentum up, because even though he didn't keep the minimum speed up, when you're defending, that doesn't matter. It's all about getting that exit speed. That's exactly what he got. He was successful in the end, and he defends that P10. But I'm sure that Peter Varga will be not happy with that one and desperate to try to fight once again. Of course, completely clean move, but when you feel as though you're the quicker car and they pull something off like that, it feels a bit icky. We saw that earlier on with the defence made on Brescia by Ibiza down in the mid pack. And there's Lawrence showing everyone how it's done down the inside, going so late, and that is impressive.
How'd he do that? How'd he do that? I thought that he was dead to rights. I thought he was going to shoot off of the circuit, but he didn't do that at all. Martin Lawrence able to convert to P6. Breccia, by the way, has taken Mims Man prior to that move for 5th place. Now Lawrence has done the same to Mims Man for the 6th place position. Down here in turn 1, gets blocked nearly off to the pit lane. There's going to be contact here. And, okay, that was way more controlled from that camera angle than it did our position in the second corner, which is where our previous camera was. I thought for sure Martin Lawrence was going for a little bit of an exploration there. Wasn't the case. Ronan Savic, though, has crossed the line and won the race tonight from pseudo pole position to the win. It's a complete win for Ronan Savic. Christoph Strepa gains several spots for P2. Van Driesch comes across the line to complete the podium in a quiet but well-deserved 3rd place.
Yes, certainly well-deserved 3rd place for Van Driesch. The top 3 very deserving of their positions, and well, it has been a very topsy-turvy race. Those at the top weren't necessarily those at the top the whole time, but Savic, in the end, after the scrapping earlier on, he's going to say that he probably had a pretty boring one, all things considered, with no one really close enough to fight him. The only exciting bit that he would have had in the race after his teammate retired was Van Streppen closing in after Savic was desperately trying to fuel save. In the end, didn't matter that he did close in, because Savic was successfully able to fuel save right to the checkered flag. But yeah, it's victory for Savic in the LMGT Cup, and well, P2 for Van Streppen, P3 for Van Driesch, and P5 for, well, my personal driver of the day. I don't know how you feel about it. The man who started first, then went to last, then went to first, then went to last again, and well, ended up P5. Ronan Savic coming out on top after all that. Christopher Streppen in 2nd place. Zino Van Driesch 21 seconds off, and then 10 seconds ahead of Reese Wilkinson in what we would call here as a John Dalton zone. Then Philip Brescia coming home in that 5th place. Martin Lawrence in 6th. Madam Mimsman in 7th, with Milan van der Weyken very unlucky to get that 8th place after all is said and done. Then Tom Watts 9th, and Callum Kerrigan rounding out the top 10, able to stave off the pressure that Peter Varga was giving earlier on, and stayed there. Varga ended up finishing 11th place. Terry Liggins in 12th. Ryan Cassidy in 13th. So not a terrible performance from him. Danny Bull, who was aggressively defending earlier on, has managed to come home in 14th place. Angela Scotti going for a gamble with a very early pit stop, but she's ended up 15th. And then Ivan Ritsov in 16th. 17th for Danaesh Ibiza after, well, a race of ups and downs, certainly for him. Zach Vermaak Andy Cotton and Chris van der Linde DNFs, and well, we have one more DNF. The first of them, and that was Raphael Huel with his technical issues he had earlier on. That is your 21 drivers that took part in this race here today, and well, in under the lights in Sakir, it was Savic who came out on top.
Certainly was. Of course, a big thank you to all of you who have stayed and watched with us. We invite you to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Follow over on Twitch as well. We see you doing it, and we very much appreciate it. We race in ACC, we race in iRacing, we race in LMU, and we'd love to have you. Don't forget about the British GT, the Mini British GT Championship. Split 1, almost full, if not already full. If we get enough, there won't be a reserve. We'll just open up a second split. 3 different lengths of races, all the British tracks, and a 90-minute mid-season race at Spa-Francorchamps on ACC. Your choice of GT3 or GT4. Race RCI.com. You can join any championship as well mid-season. Of course, our next broadcast will be on Monday, the finale of the ACC Super Trofeo Cup Season 2. That series, Joseph, that you've been covering with John Dalton has been absolutely insane. I've got to see a lot of that, and we hope that it is a fantastic finale. Before we go, just want to say thank you to all of our partners. One more time, Ready, Set, Sim. Try out their bespoke sim rig builder at Ready, Set, Sim. Build the sim rig of your dreams at Ready, Set, Sim. Coach Dave Delta, you can get any kind of setup that you'd need, whether that be for ACC, iRacing, or LMU at Coach Dave Delta, Coach Dave Academy Setups. Green Man Gaming, use their discount code by following our link in the description to get 15% off any PC game you want. No strings attached. Any game for PC, 15% off, or grab 17% off any brand new game that's come out, such as Expedition, Doom, Oblivion, all of those, 17 or 16% off using our link below. Of course, Moser Racing, your one-stop shop for direct drive sim racing hardware, quality hardware that doesn't break the bank. Moser Racing, and again, a special shout out to Motorsport UK for recommending us as an esports community. Before we go tonight, though, let's check in with the Varga report.
Hello, Jesse. The report today is general success and good vibes.
You had a good fight for P10 there at the end. Talk about that.
Yeah, it would have actually happened, but I decided to play it on the safe side of the field this time because I still do not trust the LMU calculator because sometimes it just adds on 3 laps after pit stop out of nowhere. So I took on a bit more fuel than probably was needed. But it was a good fight, it was a good chase. I had my opportunities, but Callum used the, the width of his car well enough. So yeah, it was a good chase. I would say I finished higher than I started, so it was a good one.
Well, we certainly enjoyed watching it come together. There was in the final 10 minutes, and we appreciate from both of you that it was good, hard racing, but you both were able to keep it somewhat clean. You kept it going the right direction and preserved the battle. Hard racing for sure. Anyone you want to shout out?
No, they do not deserve it.
Okay. Wow, that's the first time in RCI history I've asked somebody that question. Years and years of asking that question. That is the first time I've ever got that response. Peter Varga joining us, finished P11 tonight, put on a show for us. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you as well.
Joseph, I got to say, you never know when you go to a racetrack for the first time if it's going to be a hit or a bust, but Secure Outer Circuit, for me, that's a big old hit tonight. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. It threw up the action. I think one of the things that was great about it, and it's similar at circuits like Monza, is because there's not much technicality to it. The drivers can really get stuck into their battles rather than trying to focus on the circuit, and that's exactly what we saw tonight. Battles lasting laps and laps, and well, they looked very close together. They could focus on their racecraft a lot more than they needed to focus on the cornering. And in the end, that is exactly what ended up happening. And we got some great battles going on. And I think tonight has been a great success.
Certainly is. And wow, what a race it was here. One race left to go, the finale in 1 week's time at Imola. Joseph and myself with Ted Edwards will bring you all the action. Of course, the side story tonight was the championship battles. Would anything be decided? No, actually, is the answer to that. In both categories, Pro and Am, it's even more up in the air now than it was when we came in. 2 champions to be crowned in a week from now. Who will it be? Between now and then, ACC action from Super Trofeo on Monday. We'll see you again live on Friday. And of course, the next round of the RSS Championship on Saturday. We will see you then. Thank you all for joining us. I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Joseph Black and Ted Edwards. And until next time, have a good night.
You ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Get behind the wheel, let's go. Grip the road, feel the flow. Thunder roaring, steel alive. Live this dream and drive. Tires burning with gasoline. Push the limits, chasing green. One shot, don't slow. Go on, we'll take control. Engines scream alive tonight. Blazing past the red line. Outrun the night, won't lose this fight. Follow the road, red line for show. We're chasing taillights, don't let go. Under the stars, we'll go so far. This is who we are. Chasing taillights.